Thanks everyone for joining us for today's Drug Hunter webinar. I'm your host, Brendan Parr, and really pleased by the turnout here today. The webinar is going to go today. I'm going to run you through a bit of a high level who, what, where, when, why, etc. for our upcoming course to try to lay out some of the background, the context for it, and I'll run for about 15 to 20 minutes. And afterwards, we'll jump over to the website and just show you a little bit about the layout if you haven't had the opportunity to look before, and help you to understand where you'll go for content, how to access it, and make sure everyone's comfortable with the layout. So to start off, why create a drug discovery course at Drug Hunter? And there are really a number of reasons that one could think about doing this, but these are some of the most important areas we see that Drug Hunter might be able to really bring strengths and help, particularly industry science or time-constrained folks, really maximizing their onboarding in drug discovery and also making the most of their career for mature drug discovery scientists. So one key component is that this is an openly available resource. Once the course content rolls out, you can access any module, any section, at any time as you're interested. So this removes some of the limits of, say, inability to attend a course in real time. Perhaps you started your drug discovery career in late summer and there aren't any offerings available to you for at least a year or 2 years, just whether it's an internal or external drug discovery course. Last but not least, some of our experience, drug discovery courses tend to be funded by fluctuating budgets within organizations, right? And so, well, sometimes when things are great, there's plenty of money to fund conference attendance and educational programs. Other times that may not be the case, and it can really, impact folks in organization in disproportionate ways. Additionally, because the course's materials rolled out gradually and also generally available, this allows for self-paced and flexible learning of the content. And so I think we all know that during college and graduate school, we have the tendency to just cram for exams and pack in as much as possible. But in reality, months, years down the road, there's very little of that knowledge that sticks with us. And so having a more flexible, timely pace of the learning is aimed specifically at improving knowledge retention. So secondly is the idea of structure in courses. And so this is where we think Drug Hunter has a unique advantage in creating this content. So we are a unified organizing body, and so we can bring a cohesive structure in terms of the syllabus that we've devised, as well as the style within the course content, and also take advantage of our growing collective expertise with our internal scientific content team, and also our extensive real-time review of the literature and also conference material, disclosures, etc. More importantly, to really understand key concepts in drug discovery, it requires repetition around those themes, right? You need to see something again and again and again for it to really drive home, and then to be able to take that knowledge, have it rise to the level of wisdom in the Brooks learning hierarchy, and then be able to apply it as an expert. So repetition and building around themes really helps to entrench these key concepts. And we do that through starting with a given point and then building on the scope about it throughout the course as it progresses. So while you are very much able to jump between different sections or modules of the course, you will see that going through it in the design progression will lead to much more strength in understanding a specific concept. And last but not least is the access to knowledge. And this is really a growing problem facing the biopharma industry. There's a really nice review article by Dean Brown in JMedChem from a couple of years back, where he talks about the growing role of the small biotech in what we do, right? And one of the unforeseen consequences of this new model, where a lot of innovation is coming from small biotech organizations, is that there's not necessarily this large body of institutional knowledge about drug discovery. Oftentimes, young scientists may face sort of unreasonable expectations for what they know or need to do right out the get-go, and they really struggle to keep pace with that. There's a bit of a lack of the internal mentor in certain circumstances. So we really want to provide a standardized best practice resource for drug discovery scientists, irrespective of whether they're in large pharma or biotech organizations, to really help unify our field of drug discovery. In addition, we can bring fresh takes, rather, what's going on the other side of the drug discovery wall. Very often, what makes for a nice story is often based on firsthand experience. But if we can draw collective experiences together, we get a little bit more of a comprehensive view of a key concept, and that leads to these transferable learnings, which we really try to emphasize in Drug Hunter. How can we take this really important idea in drug discovery and think about applying it in the future? Okay. So, who are we and who are you? Just to familiarize you, if you haven't seen before, the drug discovery course is being run by our industry research and relations team. So, it's my colleagues Sandrine and Dennis, as well as myself, and our team is growing in 2026. In addition, we're supported by a really excellent team of folks on the development and logistics side who I do want to make specific mention of here because none of this is possible without their help. Um, so Sandrine, Dennis, and I, of course, are all former pharma and biotech professionals, having spent between the three of us about coming up on, I'd say, 30 years in industry. And we're drawing from that wisdom as well as the strength, again, of our scientific content team to really craft the quality of this course. Now, who is this intended for? Oftentimes, courses are called X in medicinal chemistry. And I want to start by saying that this is really designed to be a course for industry research scientists. Medicinal chemists, of course, may benefit very much, but we view it as equally important to empower scientists from drug metabolism, discovery biology, pharmacology, et cetera, to make stronger project teams. So for early career scientists, of course, there's the matriculation period into an individual contributor role, typically as you jump from academia into the pharma industry. And their, exposure to as much drug discovery content as possible, but in a logical and organized way, we think is particularly valuable. One of the cruxes, again, of this change from, a large pharma-driven industry to a biotech partnered industry is that oftentimes folks are jumping into people manager roles, perhaps prior to having the foundations that they might wish to have in that role. And so we also view this as a powerful development tool for people managers, thinking about how they can bring up their staff. So, perhaps you're 5, 6, 7 years into your career, you have a few direct reports, and while you certainly have some good drug discovery experiences at that point in time, maybe you don't have quite the body of knowledge, the body of exposure across therapeutic areas, modalities, et cetera, that you'd like to facilitate development of your people. And so we see this as a case where you could say to one of your reports, let's go through this section of the course and talk about the learnings together and see how this relates to what's going on in our own projects. Lastly, we view this as a tool for empowering teams and team leaders and project leaders, specifically addressing any knowledge gaps, whether it's due to specific functional area or just, perhaps where you've operated in your career. Many of us will work on hit ID, hit to lead projects ad nauseum in cycles for years on end and never see late stage drug discovery. And the opposite can be true. And sometimes that can present a challenge in moving into team lead and project lead roles, is that you really need to have seen all of this in order to take those steps. And so what we want to do is provide some foundational or fundamental knowledge for folks across different functional areas, such that they can better understand their role within the drug discovery paradigm, but also be able to ask good questions of their teammates and really become thought leaders within their projects. So to that point, what does this course cover? we see it as covering the key knowledge for all scientists to facilitate that communication within their project teams. And so we've organized this to roughly follow a unlikely but plausibly linear drug discovery project. And we start off with really the genesis of drugs in the industry. Why is it that this is nearly $1 trillion industry and the subject of so much in the political arena per se? We jump into the idea of how you pick a good target, how you identify it, and you validate it in the second module. And so all of this being in sort of the target ID, target validation paradigm, then moving towards hit ID and thinking about a library selection, a screening paradigm, followed by developing or understanding binding mode through different biophysical techniques or structural biology, as well as assay development. And from there, oftentimes projects are thinking about how do we improve the potency of our compounds. And so in these red modules, we're focusing on medicinal chemistry concepts related to the parallel ideas from the drug discovery field. So, designing and onboarding an assay and then driving down the potency within that assay. Subsequently, at that point, once you have potency, you're often thinking about metabolism and PK. Of course, hopefully you're doing this all at the same time, but then you need to be familiar with some of the medicinal chemistry concepts around exposure. And it's useful, I think, in particular for DMPK scientists and medicinal chemists to really be on the same page in terms of understanding what the other is talking about and also what their goals are with specific changes, specific studies, et cetera. And this partnership is really, important to a successful discovery program. From there, we're often thinking about translational models like in vivo proof of concept and also safety assessment toxicology. And we'll conclude the medicinal chemistry portion with a discussion about some strategies to deal with off-target liabilities, of course, the classics being PERG or phospholipidosis. And last but not least, we cap the main content of the course with a module on GLP and GMP considerations, all of the scientific work leading up to an IND filing there. Okay. So where can the materials be found? The course is going to be supported by mobile browser, so this can be done on your mobile phone or on desktop through Chrome. Just to note that it will not be on the Drug Hunter app in this initial release. Now, when you go to the course page, the way it is laid out is you'll see that there are modules at the high level, which we just discussed on the previous slide, and they'll show up in gray and with a coming soon banner. As soon as a module has come live, the graphic will update, it'll become clickable, and you can dive in to the sections within. At that level, we provide a brief description of what that module entails in case you're curious for a little more information than simply the title. Now, within each module are anywhere from 2 to about 8 sections, and the sections are a concentration of topics and concepts. And so within the hit discovery module, we have the idea of quality and not quantity of hits. And so for each section, we provide some of the keywords and concepts that are going to be covered. This is not by any means comprehensive, but just, again, to give you a little bit more of a flavor of the things that will be talked about here. So pains, the clustering versus a singleton SAR, and hit expansion, use of chem informatics, etc. When you click into a section, which will go from, again, the gray shade to the purple once it's become live, you'll see recorded lectures and slides as well. So they'll display with all of the slides laid out linearly, as well as the recorded video. You'll also see links to articles and case studies from the Drug Hunter page, as well as the primary literature associated with each slide. So you can go straight to those sources if you want to learn more information. And that's something I'll talk about in the next slide. Following slides, excuse me. So when is the course going to become available? It will be launching in just under a month's time. So on the first Monday of the new year, January 5th, the first section of the first module will be released. And we are planning to release one section per week, each week, excluding major holidays in the US, as well as any of the larger national meetings. we recognize there is definitely such a thing as information overload, and the last thing folks need is a drug discovery course on top of an ACS national meeting. The slides and recordings are going to be available on the course page to view at your convenience, but our general suggestion is set up a regular 30-minute block on your calendar where you can sit down and go through the section. And that's to say, each recorded lecture, we're aiming for 20, but certainly under 30 minutes to make sure this is a very manageable amount of your time being dedicated. At the end of each module, there will be a short quiz covering content from all sections. And by completing that, you can receive a completion certificate, but also we will provide opportunities for your feedback in the end of those quizzes. So if there's content you wanted more of, less of, things you think we missed entirely, and so on, that will be your opportunity to provide that information to the team. In terms of the whole schedule, we have 37 sections or lectures, and so the complete rollout is going to be done by late 2026. And again, once the entirety of the course is rolled out, it will all be housed there on the Drug Hunter site. Following those core lectures, we do plan to release additional topics, which will be binned under Module 12. And those will cover, really important areas of research that don't necessarily fit under the essentials of the drug discovery paradigm. So things like induced proximity or nonlinear drug disposition in certain circumstances. So how does this course differ from other educational platforms out there? And I think we will leave it to everyone to make the judgment from their experience. But I think most importantly, great drug discovery stories, unfortunately, don't necessarily translate into a great educational experience. So you could think about this hypothetical story, which would draw a standing packed crowd at any conference. But at the end of it, I think folks would remember a story about a really cool molecule discovery, and any sort of key concept might be lost. And oftentimes it's these great talks for good reason, which do become the substrate for educational content. So our approach is to really focus our course on the key concept. What's the learning you need, and how could that potentially apply to your program based on the context in which you've seen? To support that, we link it or associate it with these transferable learnings. And so transferable learnings will touch on some of the Drug Hunter content, such as modality reviews, target briefs, and molecule case studies. So I'll give you a bit of a clarification or example of what I mean by this. So in Module 1, Section 1, what are drugs? We think about the idea of how does ligand binding affect its target, and it can affect target activity by increasing or decreasing it. It can affect it by changing the target concentration or the function, right? And you have a matrix of opportunities. You also have many modes of binding that can affect different function. And so we introduce this concept right at the beginning. And then if folks want to learn at that time specific information about, say, an inverse agonist, they can click onto a GPR6 case study to read in a bit more. Or specifically, how have protein stabilizers been discovered? We can go into the Rosetta-Popt case study and read a bit more about this p53 mutant stabilizer. And so there's a natural synergy by focusing on the key concepts here and then linking that through the transferable learnings into the drug discovery content provided by our scientific team. So with that, please do feel free to add questions. After this, I'm going to jump over to the course page and walk us through there. But just to articulate before doing so, if you go to drughunter.com/course, that's where you can sign up for email notifications. I will show you that in a minute. And the course is being released as part of the Drug Hunter subscription. And so please do reach out to info@drughunter.com if you'd like more information on Drug Hunter subscription. Okay. So from the Drug Hunter landing page, under the resources tab, if you haven't encountered it already, the second item down is the drug discovery course. And again, this is the URL drughunter.com/course. This provides our brief philosophy on the course. Folks will have registered here or through a social media post. If you are interested in receiving email notifications about the course, including when the sections release, you can sign up through this portal here. And below that, we have the course content. So as I mentioned, in its entirety, there are 11 core modules to the course, followed by special topics or additional topics and case studies to be released ad hoc in the future. Now, if I jump up to the top, just so folks can see, again, how to interact, we can click on the first module, and within that, you'll see the 4 sections of content that will be covered, as well as the module quiz to be released at the end of the module. And so within each of these, again, you can see what's some of the key concepts, the areas being covered. So in the first section, we're going to talk about a bit of human history and impact, specifically the influence of drug discovery on the HIV epidemic, the idea of receptor occupancy and drug design, as well as pharmacophores, mechanism of action, modalities, drug likeness, some of the foundations to thinking about small molecules in this space. Now, if we click on here, what you'll see is at the top, the banner head that I mentioned, the section coming soon. This is where your video will be posted going through the course. Now, this is very much visual content and meant to be supplemented by the lecture. And so the slides themselves do have plenty of content, but we do recommend listening to the video to make the most of it. They're not necessarily a standalone item. And so if you go through the course, the section, what you can see is we have snapshots within the first module of how the course starts out. So talking about the scope of the pharma industry building on increased productivity through the recent decades. And that's really been the source of sustainability here, while costs of developing a drug have gone up and returns have more or less flatlined over recent years. And it's important, of course, to note that this is a field of natural product medicine, right? And there's still a huge range of compounds that have been derived from natural resources. And then we carry on, again, with some of the impacts of drug discovery and the move into logical drug design. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and jump to the Q&A. And please feel free to add any of your questions. So Jigedi-san asked, does the course need additional subscription? So no additional subscription is required. This is initially going to be rolled out as part of the existing Drug Hunter subscription. We are considering in the future the opportunity to have a standalone course subscription, but that will not be part of, not be an offering initially while we develop the course. So the question, how much time should we expect to devote to the course per week other than the 30-minute lecture? That's a great question. Ultimately, it is up to you. So the lectures are intended to be under 30 minutes. And we will be focusing primarily on the key concepts for drug discovery within the course. Now, what's linked is a mixture, again, of primary literature and Drug Hunter content. So if you've been reading Drug Hunter for a while, you know that the articles are generally intended to be 5 to 10-minute reads. So it often depends how extensively you want to go into a given subject. If you are going through the course and saying, this is interesting, but it's never going to relate to what I'm doing, or it's not knowledge I need near term, then you're going to be on the shorter end of the expected time. If it happens to pertain very much to challenges you're dealing with or things organizationally that you're working on, you might spend a bit more time going into the case studies, articles, and primary literature around that section. Um, I would say our recommendation would be to take advantage of the bookmark feature and save articles that you think could be interesting and, look through them in your commute, maybe a few minutes before you get going in the morning as you have free time, make it part of your regular literature review. And if you go through this practice, you know, weekly for the duration of the course, I think you'll find yourself very much an improved scientist from it, or so we hope. Um, how far along are you with preparing the material? I will say we are not done, but quite far along there. Sorry for not a more specific answer. Um, would there be any options for undergrads wishing to join the course? As far as I remember, no single drug hunter subscription. So that is correct that we don't offer single user subscriptions. We are institutional licensing is the current model, but we do recommend speaking to program coordinators, et cetera, in your institutions who can explore using Drug Hunter with library licensing budgets in the same way that they fund, say, a SciFinder license, things of that sort, and points out that could be an option for your organization. So feel free again to contact info@drughunter.com for more there. That's a great question. And so I think the next question about signing up for the course without a subscription we addressed. Um, are we considering having the course validated academically? Yes. So our long-term vision would be if we move this to a standalone feature outside of Drug Hunter, that we would then go to greater depths for academic credentialing, and that is a longer-term goal for us, but not part of this initial release, I'll say. So, great question. Um, comment on the level of difficulty of the course. Someone who knows the basics, does the course go into enough technical detail to fill the gaps and deepen our understanding? That's a great question. It really depends, I would say. In some areas, if you consider yourself quite well versed, then I suspect the course may not go to significantly greater depths. What I can say is, having worked in pharma and biotech for over a decade, I've learned a fair bit just by working on course content and research, thinking about things more deeply. And I've tried to personally view those items as, important and or significant enough to try to make sure they are shared and covered such that someone in the 5 to 10 year range of their career would still pull away some learning from the course content. Uh, Certainly, there's a lot of aspects of drug discovery that we take as dogma, right? Like once a day is what matters for a pill, but we often don't look into why that is and what the statistics show. So what we've tried to do is really provide the foundations to those arguments and bring a little more depth. So I hope that answers your question. Um, can you attempt the end of module quizzes as many times? Is there a pass grade? That's a great question. I think we will allow multiple attempts, and these will, in the initial release, be relatively short, largely being mindful of the fact that folks in industry are busy between, you know, personal and also work obligations, commutes, et cetera. So we've tried to keep it quite to the point and manageable. I think the pass grade, I have to see, it would be module dependent. Sorry, I can't give you a more concrete answer there. Um, are we planning on incorporating live tutorial features or a way to permit students to submit questions? So the module quizzes will allow for some questions to be submitted. Also, the info@drughunter email can be used to submit questions. If When we hope to move this to a dedicated learning platform, that's where we would plan to add more audio-visual features, including live tutorials, live sessions, etc. Within the Drug Hunter housing in this initial course release, we won't have that option available. It's a great question. So Yoshi asks, thanks for the initiative. How does one provide feedback on the course regarding desired additions to a specific section or proposing additional sections? Great question, Yoshi. So in the module quiz, we'll have three opportunities to provide feedback on that specific module, as well as we will be taking general feedback for content folks would like to see covered in the additional topics section in Module 12. And we'll be keeping track of those over the course of the next year, weighting them, and start to announce those later in 2026. Great question. So it looks like we have gotten to the end of the questions. So with that, I'll stay on for a few minutes more myself, but otherwise, thank you all so much for taking the time to attend and the engagement. And we really look forward to helping support your drug discovery education in 2026.